API. So something that has been but a buzzword that has been there around recently because of the complexity of the systems, and sometimes we wonder about what it is. And today we're going to discuss about that. What is an API? So before even discussing what is an API, let's see what we used to do before. So past, not me. Back then I wasn't a developer at that time. So in the script in the diagram, it would say like the back then where the size was smaller. Now because of the program is like 1 gig just to run Hello World. Not only that, you will have so many components all together in order to just Hello World. It's similar to that now. Back then, websites were much more simpler, and a simple HTML file would be just satisfiable for your requirements for the clients, for the users that you want to do a website. But now you need some animation, user interaction, a lot of features within your system, a lot of basic features. On top of those basic features, you have to add special features to compete with other websites, right? So these requirements that have been asked by the users or clients, it became much more complex. So the program that is communicating between those components or between those features, you have the complexity became high because you have to integrate, for example, the authentication. The authentication is basics, right? So you have to do registration, login, and then after that, you have to somehow figure it out with the reporting, the admin module, the user module, the manager. All those components makes the system much more complex. So and the requirements doesn't vanish from the user, and the time as well, the time slot basically. The time slot is as well limited. So what would be the solution for to do like to solve this complex programs? It will be still there, where you have to still make a complex program, unlike back then when it was just a hello world website. You still have to do those programs. So what would be the solution in that regard? So usually what we do is we outsource some external components, such as when it's about social authentication. If it's just social authentication, when it just requires authentication based on social media, you could just use Facebook, Twitter, GitHub social authentication based on your system, right? So instead of you doing the logic of doing the registration and authorization, you let a program, another system that has already made it properly, and use that system. Or, for example, if you want to store images, videos, instead of you doing the logic of creating a whole server that stores your images, your videos, and optimize it, on top of that, you use some external platforms that already made those search systems to make it easier for you to produce a product. Or another option would be, if you have already done a similar system, which, for example, has the authentication module already ready, you could use those systems instead of not reusing and copying pasting in your system, because that might cause some issues. Instead of that, let the system be alone, let it be there alone, but you just use that in a communication way, like you communicating with that system. So, but then communicating with the other system, for example, your system is running on JavaScript and the other system is running on Go language, or the outsourcing software, for example, the Facebook auth is using PHP while your system is still using JavaScript. How would you communicate between those two different systems? So one is like in the real world situation where I'm you speaking in my mother tongue, and you speaking in your mother tongue. How would we communicate and interact? So there should be a common language between those two different systems, or between those two different people. And usually in us, so the common language would be English or Arabic or Chinese. So those big common languages, right? And the system, or um, those two different system, the common language would be, it could be something that has been agreed on before, when the system has been created, and this is what we call API. So the API is handling between those systems, their communication. So that is about the API. And there is a common language. So there are some common language between those softwares, and has certain rules of communication, such as, like, similar to English, where it has grammar rules that you have to create the sentence on. It is similar to that, where there are different ways of communicating between different systems, and it depends on how it has been agreed on prior to creating the system. That would be example of common languages would be JSON, so one of the popular ones for the websites, and XML and YAML. Those three ones you will see them regularly, most of the times, especially JSON in websites. So those are the common languages that, in order to communicate between those two different systems. And for the rules, the rules would be just using the common language, but it has a certain way of communicating, right? So generally there will be a request and response. You could say, I ask you, and you give me something. An event would be, I react whatever you give me. So if it's an external system, you ask something and it will give you something if it has it. If it's not, then it will respond, I don't have it, I'm sorry. Or event, I'll just wait for something for the other person to give me, and then I react towards the thing that you gave me. For example, the other person gave me a gift, I'm reacting to it, I'll say thank you very much, and maybe if it's a chocolate, I'll eat it, right? So there are different in the request and response. There are different ways. Under that request and response, there's REST. Usually you'll see REST in websites, and RPC, action oriented, GraphQL, and SOAP. SOAP is an old version, but you might not see them, but these three, you'll see them regularly most of the time. Especially this one is a new one, so you might see them, especially this REST and RPC. So in the event based, there's WebSockets, there's server sent events and queues, and there are many other modes, even in request response, but I'm not sure about them. So, but generally you'll see them most of the time, especially in websites, you'll see them, such as REST, where it's in websites. In WebSocket, you'll see them in website as well, like mostly, generally. So that's about it. So in conclusion, what is an API? It's just generally a communication between two different systems, which has a common language that could be possibly JSON. It could be possibly a JSON, and the rules could be either I ask and you give me something, or I react what you give. I hope this one helps and didn't cause any confusion in this regard. Thank you very much. Hope you have a nice day.